Now, hours after the end of a one-day Easter ceasefire declared by Russia, there were air alerts across eastern Ukraine and the central Kyiv regions. Both Kyiv and Moscow have accused each other of breaking the truce thousands of times. Under pressure from the White House to pursue peace, Ukraine's leader did propose a new, longer ceasefire on long-range missile and drone attacks. There were no air raid alerts across Ukraine for at least one day at the weekend, which is extremely rare.
As for the proposal not to hit civilian infrastructure, this needs to be figured out. For example, the strike by our armed forces on the Congress Center, I believe, of Summer University, which is now well known to everyone. Is this a civilian target or not? Well, there was an award ceremony taking place there for those who committed crimes in the Kursk region. And these are the people we consider criminals, who should receive the deserved retribution for what they did in our border region, including Kursk. They have received that retribution. It was done in order to punish them. But is it a civilian facility or not? The regime is using these civilian facilities. That needs to be figured out. This is a subject to be examined, maybe through bilateral dialogue. We don't rule that out. So we will analyze all of this and make the appropriate decisions. The fighting has resumed. We said this from the very beginning when we announced the ceasefire. But we always have a positive attitude to a truce. That is why we took this initiative, especially on the Easter holidays. Most likely, it was Kyiv's fault.
That's Vladimir Putin there. Well, for more on all this, let's speak now to the international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, who joins me on the line from London. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and happy Easter. What are your thoughts on that 30-hour truce, which is now over, of course, amid claims of violations by both sides?
Unfortunately, it was exactly as President Zelensky said, a PR gesture, an empty gesture really by Russia. It did not lead and could not lead and will not lead to anything more, and therefore from that point of view it was irrelevant. As for the violations, yes, I think Russia was probably by far the greater violator, but the problem is Ukraine in this situation hasn't played its cards properly, and there's also reports of Ukrainian missiles or some sort of attacks also. Therefore, it is a pity, because it's the sort of thing which, had Ukraine played its cards properly, could have shown up Russia quite demonstrably as not keeping its own ceasefires. Unfortunately, this has not happened. The ceasefire is going nowhere, and in fact has gone.
Nevertheless, a day and a half of relative tranquility for the beleaguered Ukrainians. I mean, as you said, that's now ended. And when you consider the depth of aggression in this war, would it be fair to say that this brief reprieve was something for the Ukrainians?
Well, yes, I suppose it is a sop of some sort. After all, it is always pleasant to have any sort of ceasefire. However, it should be noted, if the Ukrainian ministries are to be believed, Russia carried on making a great many attacks. It ran into over 1,872 was one figure. And so therefore it wasn't nearly as much a reprieve as it could have been. And but it was something, and hopefully there will be more in the future, but it is most unlikely.
And the negotiations now appearing to gather pace. I mean, there were some in Paris, and it now moves to London with US, Ukrainian and other EU officials. I mean, what are your expectations?
Well, the key move is not actually in these negotiations, is what President Donald Trump has stated. The USA will back out of any further work in this field if there is no movement, as no movement is likely either from the Ukrainian or the more especially from the Russian side. It follows quite obviously that America will go out of these. The moment it goes out, it will be a different war. And therefore, these conferences, insofar as they help cement Europe-Ukrainian relations, are quite important, but only from that point of view.
So, I mean, again, not to make you repeat yourself, but after that brief ceasefire on Easter Sunday, I mean, what do you reckon comes next? I mean, if this attempt at diplomacy fails, will the US definitely walk, you think, as Marco Rubio threatened, or might there be another move in sort of a different direction?
Personally, I honestly doubt there'll be any sort of move because the goals of Ukraine and Russia are far apart. There's no need for the Russians to back down from any of their terms. They're looking for either a very favorable peace or to carry on an ever more successful war. As for the Ukrainians, President Zelensky has made it quite clear he stands by his demands that all Russians leave. And even if there were to be a peace of any sort, he would not agree to the Russians occupying Ukrainian land diplomatically, if you like, in the sense that there will forever be a Ukrainian claim on them, and much, much worse. The Europeans have said they'll send a peacekeeping force on the frontier, a reassuring force, they call it, because it won't be too big. But that's precisely what Russia does not want. And so therefore it is most unlikely that anything will come of the negotiations, which means that Donald Trump will have the possibility of pulling out. From the America's point of view in the short term, this has some benefits. There's no need for this hemorrhaging of money sending aid to Ukraine. They can focus on other issues because Donald Trump has other very pressing issues on his doorstep, so to speak, of which Iran, China, tariff trade war are just but two. And therefore, in that sense, I expect there to be no change from the ceasefire side, but there will be a continuation and indeed an escalation of the war once America pulls out.
So, I mean, beyond all the sort of European rhetoric about not wanting to reward President Putin for his invasion of Ukraine, is it also a failure on the Western side to have not come to the recognition that the balance of power between the two sides was always decisively on the Russian side? And instead of recognizing this and organizing a sort of negotiated settlement and avoiding bloodshed and destruction, they persisted in their, as the Trump administration put it, hardcore delusional military support for Ukraine.
Unfortunately, there is something to be said from that point of view, and the Ukrainians, in fact, are fully backing all these European points. As I stated in one of my books, compromise is the only possibility because, quite frankly, there is no way of forcing Russia to leave. Russia is a nuclear superpower. There is no way of defeating it. It is a far bigger country. It has allies. And now, please note, because America is pressing on Iran will probably be an even better ally for it. And since Russia has another ally in the possibility of China, because America is pressing on China too. Therefore, the possibility of attaining the goals that Europe and primarily President Zelensky set themselves, freeing Ukrainian 2014 territories of any Russian occupiers, and incidentally, he still is going on about the fact there should be some trials and recompensation by Russia, all of which makes no possibility of peace. And therefore, to that extent, yes, the Americans are right. There is no possibility of peace as they stand with these, if we may say so, idealistic approaches, as opposed to more realpolitik, as the Germans put during the Cold War, of a compromise. And therefore, I anticipate actually the war turning badly for the Ukrainians, especially if the Americans pull out all their support, including, of course, their ability to monitor Russian troop movements.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the International Affairs Analyst, and he joined me there on the line from London.